Today on Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You, we are going to be talking about why you are wasting so much money on your marketing plan. And we're going to talk about why that really matters to the profitability of your business. So stay tuned for today's episode.
Welcome to the podcast where we tell small business owners how to use the secrets and strategies that big businesses use to increase their profitability.
Now, welcome back to the show, and I want to welcome on our co-host. Welcome back, Lola. How are you?
I'm great, Terrell. How are you doing today? It's a beautiful day.
I am doing amazing. Thank you for asking. Now, for today's topic, I wanted to talk about something that, most people would usually think this falls under marketing, but I think that there is a financial aspect to this, and there's a reason why your finance person should be talking about this. And this is an area where we learned the hard way in many cases. It is marketing. So today we're going to talk about, creating kind of I guess you would call it a circular reference within your a feedback loop is probably the best way to put it. A feedback loop in your marketing and then how that is profitable. Before we jump into that, what was your experience with marketing prior to us starting this business?
Oh, I was mostly on the consumer side of things. So was doing a lot of consuming. And to be honest, I think I really thought marketing was probably just like a really nice, it was all about the visuals, So I would say I had a very superficial understanding of what marketing was. Let's just say that without getting into too much detail. How about you?
Gotcha. Well, I mean, we got time for you to get in a little bit more detail if you want. So I will say for myself, marketing, I really just thought marketing was about the visuals and you just come up with some things that are really cool. I had no idea how much, science and strategy and thought went into it. And when we started doing it, I was like, wow, I was so underprepared for what it takes to have more effective and successful marketing strategies.
You know what's interesting? I would actually say I think until very recently, um, I think I really I don't even want to use over complexify. That's not even probably a word, but I think I made marketing in my head more overly complex than it really was. And by that, I mean, I think anytime your business is putting out content, is branding, whatever it is, like I think that you have a message that speaks to your potential client or you have a message that speaks to people. So I think for me, what I would say, I think I had a very narrow focus initially of what marketing was. And I think I felt like it only needed to be that way, which was through ads or, through this big billboard that you put out there or through radio or TV ads. Like that was how I understood marketing. But I think when we started the business, I started to realize that the content we were putting out and the way that we interacted with prospective customers, like all of those things were, I guess, for lack of a better word, representing the brand, but also in some respects, specifically on the content, was really a way to market indirectly our business.
Yep. I agree. And I mean, I would agree with those things seem very simple. And I do think a lot of people do fall into that rhythm where marketing happens very specific way and it has to go that way. And I get it because a lot of times, when you're looking on social media or you see, mostly on social media, you see marketing agencies advertising what goes into marketing, and they're usually just talking about the stuff they get paid for, like the stuff that you will hire them to do for you, and thinking about like, hey, I got to shoot a commercial or, I have to do this major production. But I do think that there are some very effective and very cost-effective ways, I think, of being able to do marketing. So I want to go talk a little bit about, when we first started doing marketing, you mentioned about the content, what was kind of like your mindset going into the content and what was it like getting started with creating content?
Less is more. which is like counterintuitive. It's like it's not counterintuitive. It's like it's the exact opposite. Like I didn't want to put too much content out there. I remember when we initially, I would say for those of you that haven't been with us from the beginning, when we started the Business Talk Library, initially when we started the content, it was we were what writing. Terrell was writing articles on LinkedIn. And then we transitioned in 2020. We transitioned, was it 2020 or 2019? I think it was 2019 where you started doing the videos. And then from videos, it kind of just like took off in terms of doing content. But I remember Terrell and I, there was a lot of contention because I wanted to post or just do, I felt like I didn't want to bombard people with content because it kind of felt a bit spammy at the time. And I was like, no, we maybe we just do one video a week. Like we're fine. We don't need to do, multiple times a day. And Terrell was like, no, we do 4 or 5 times, 6 times a day. Terrell was doing like 5 interviews in a day. And I'm just like, bro, this is a lot of information. And so I think for me, I was kind of going in with the less is more approach but now honestly thinking about it, I don't think that was, I mean, I know that was not the most effective approach to take. So how about you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I went into creating content probably back when we were just starting to, create blogs and writing. I knew that content was a way of communicating your message. So I was willing to communicate the message. Now, I just wasn't in a place to scale and really crank out a ton of writing because that took a little bit more time. But one of the things that I learned early on is you have to have a process for getting out as much, relevant and useful content as possible. Like, early on,
Right.
like when we started writing the blogs and when you were my first editor and we used to have our fights about that process.
Man, we have had trials and tests in this marriage. I was like, I would like pretty much rewrite the blog for Terrell, and he'd be like, "No, no, no, I don't want you to rewrite it. I just want you to tell me your feedback." And I'm like, "But I think this could sound so much better." And yeah, so that was a very interesting phase of our editing of our content
And
journey.
what's very interesting is it's something that we work with a lot of businesses on. I mean, whether it was in the corporate finance or now in the firm where you work with a lot of businesses and you ask, okay, all right, where are you spending your time? Are you
Hmm.
spending your time in the most valuable way? Because if you're spending a lot of your time like redoing work, then you're probably not, using your time wisely, which means you're probably not making as much money. And so one of the things we really nailed down and said, hey, I don't need you to do what I'm already or redo what I'm already doing. The
Hmm.
idea was we had to set up a process to where if I create, your job is to review and give feedback. And then if you create, my job is to review and give feedback, not to, well, I think I can make this better. And it's just like, that's not going to be very productive because I do realize that early on, I started seeing a common mistake that a lot of people make, which is why they tend to lose a lot of money when it comes down to marketing is they tend to look at marketing as a one channel type thing. Like if they're doing video, they tend to look at it as, hey, well, I need to put all of my production value into video because that's how people are going to find us. Or I'm doing blogs, I need to be all in on blogs. I need to go hire a blog writer and a blog editor. And one of the things that I quickly realized is, you know what, how your customers will find you will not just come from one channel or one outlet.
Right.
You need a multi-channel kind of feedback loop when it comes down to content.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think for me, one of the stories that we recently heard that really resonates with me and I think proves that point is one of our new clients found us through a forum where people were looking for accountants that support law firms. And basically, someone commented and was like, "Yeah, the TL Turner Group is, hey, what's up?" And I'm like, how did they even know we existed? Because we put out so much content. And I really think it just goes to show that, hey, between the content that we put out, the videos, the blogs we write, hey, people are bound to find you one way or another. And I think, Terrell, for me, one of the things that I will say that I've also observed with marketing, and I think this was a lesson I had to learn, was when you talked about putting like so much, kind of like putting your eggs in one basket, I guess is the right way to say it. But I think also just the scalability, I think kind of goes also beyond processes, but I think it's also the scalability of the finances that are available for you to really take this next level. I think one of the challenges I had when we were doing the marketing and when I was thinking through it was the need to go all in and spend tens of thousands of dollars on a specific strategy for a specific outlet for a specific channel that didn't really materialize the results we wanted versus, for example, with content, organic content, putting 5 6 videos out a day, being able to actually help generate clients for us. So I think sometimes I've noticed as business owners we tend to be, we think like the more money we invest in something, the more likely we're going to have a favorable outcome, and it always doesn't work that way. And I know we've made a few mistakes, and we've also had to learn that, to where we've done some marketing campaigns haven't really generated any revenue, and then you have a situation like this where someone finds us in a forum based on content that they saw or watched, right, that we didn't even really invest any money in promoting.
Yep. No, I totally agree. I mean, because I do think that that is an area where I talk to a lot of businesses, and when we start looking at the financial impact of their marketing approach, we start realizing that you're losing a lot of money because
Mhm.
of the way that you're approaching this. And so,
Yeah.
what I want to do kind of for the rest of the conversation is just kind of talk through, point out some of the things that we found as we've been doing kind of this financial assessment of their marketing strategy. And as I point out a couple things, I definitely want to get your feedback and your input on, like, hey, what have you seen on that? So the first one, I think we've already talked about it, was, them putting all their eggs in one basket. Like, I need to go out and I need to buy all the fanciest camera. I need to buy the fanciest microphone. I need, all the top notch. I need to create an entire studio so I can
Bruh,
create content, like, if whether that's a podcast or a video. What's your reaction to that?
don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. I know that you're going to be tempted to do it, but don't do it. I am a perfect example. I think we're a perfect example as people who have been, I guess, consistently creating content for the last, what, 4 years, video content for the last 4 years. I think the first year of filming and recording, if you were to ballpark an estimate, how much money would you say we spent on video equipment slash gadgets? Like maybe 5 grand plus?
I
Because
would
the
say,
cameras
well,
alone
the
were how much?
well, what I would say is, I mean, when you say the first year, because we started off very basic. Like, we started
Yeah, that's
off
true.
with a
That's
cell
true.
phone
2019.
and
You're
like
right.
a,
You're right.
maybe a $40 lapel mic. And then
That's
at
true.
some point we got super fancy, and that's
Oh,
where we got into the several thousands of dollars.
yeah, that's true. Because we started filming, you started doing videos. Yeah, that's right. We were still in Ohio. So that was like 2018. Actually, yeah, we've been doing content a lot longer, video content. We started in 2018. We were doing the videos, and it was very scrappy. Like Terrell's camera, like we weren't even doing the editing. Oh my gosh, I can't even get started on it. Let me not digress. But I would say we spent probably five plus $1,000 on camera equipment, videos, all that stuff. And to be honest, I would probably say the content for us that did the best and probably yielded the most results oftentimes was the stuff that was so basic. And I think there's a temptation sometimes to spend a bunch of money on the bells and whistles and having everything look great and having all this big stuff. But when it really comes down to it, if I'm thinking about as a business owner and someone that could potentially be interested in doing business with you, am I interested because I feel like you know what the heck you're talking about and you're providing value, or am I interested because you have a pretty dope lighting on your podcast? Like, why would I be interested in doing business with you, right? And I think for me, that's something that I had to learn, because as we're talking now in the audience, I have a probably like $400, $500 light that we spent money on when we first started going through that fancy phase, that I seldom use. I think we use it like maybe once every 6 months. But at the end of the day, like for us, the content that has performed the best has really been the stuff holding hands, holding the camera, holding it up or whatever. It hasn't been the fancy stuff. So I will say that I think focusing on what is your customer getting value, or potential prospective customer getting value from, versus where you're spending money and investing.
Gotcha. All right. So, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I mean, as far as, focusing less on, buying the fanciest equipment, but to really narrow your focus in on what's actually delivering value. Um,
Yep.
Now, another area I want to talk about that I've seen happen a lot is where people invest the time in creating the content, and they put the content on, let's say, Facebook or LinkedIn, and they just put the video out there. No real effort around the copy as far as the text that they use with the post. They just
Mm.
create this awesome video and then they throw it out there. What's your feedback, or what's your reaction when you see that, or even when you think about when we did that?
Yeah, so I would say I think that one really is where kind of the nitty-gritty, the work really comes in as a business owner, right? Because that's something I've also struggled with. I think I've had challenges with that in the past, and now we have resources like ChatGPT that'll basically write your copy if you want for you. Great technology. But I think ultimately, as a business owner, really, I think that's where the work comes in, of you being able to understand your prospective client, right? Like, who are you writing this for? Who do you want this to really resonate with when they read this? And so I think sometimes, I'll speak for myself, I think sometimes there was a hesitancy with writing the copy. It's just like, I don't really want to narrow in and focus too much on someone specific, because I don't want to isolate people, because there was more of a focus on the content performing well versus a focus on the content converting potential clients. Because at the end of the day, if your goal is to sell, or not, maybe not sell, if your goal is to have this reach your prospective client, do you want to write it in a way that is targeting your prospective client, or do you want to write it in a way that's going to get the most likes, right? And so for us, I would say I've noticed, and one of the things that I've realized, and it's been a consistent testament in our business, is we may have not gotten all of 1,500 likes, 1,700, 10,000 likes, but the conversion at the end of the day is really what tells us, is your content successful when it comes to targeting your prospective client.
Yeah, I think that that is so in line with, the truth of that. When I think about, the way we used to put out content, where we put all this effort into, we make the video, put the video out there.
Yeah.
But one of the things we weren't doing as well was really being clear about who is this video for? And
Mm.
something that allowed us to really start, focusing on, a more profitable way of doing it is where we would take a video and we would actually chop it up into smaller pieces, and then we would use it was the same video we were posting in different places, is we would change the verbiage in the text of the post to target a certain audience. And that was when I started seeing that, man, this same exact video with different text actually attracted the interest of two completely different people. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, like it's one of those things where when you think about it from a financial standpoint, if I can use one asset to solve multiple problems by
Mhm.
just making some minor changes, it's like that is a perfect scenario for any business.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we weren't using that mindset when it came down to our content. And when we started making that switch, I was like, you know what? We're actually seeing more profitability in our business.
That's a really good point, and I think the reason for that of why we were I'll speak for myself. I think the reason why I wasn't as keen to use it was initially was because if I'm being honest, I was just lazy, right? Because you go through this process, you record this video, this content, and you're like, people should just this is helpful information. Like people should just, watch it or people should just listen to it. People should just take time out of their day because this is going to help them. But the reality is, like, if you think about yourself, you have a limited amount of time in your day. Like, you're not going to waste time on things that you don't want to waste, spend your time on that you don't feel like are valuable or don't catch your attention. And so I think when we changed that strategy and we actually started to see that it was yielding results, then I was like, all right, okay, yeah, we definitely need to do something different. And it's not ideal to have to learn that way, but I just have to be honest. Like sometimes that's the best way that I learn is where, hey, oh, we tried this, okay, it works, let's do this again. But I do think definitely, like you said, the asset, if you can use one asset to generate across multiple platforms, whether it's content or something else in your business, if you can create basically variations of content and have optimal, I guess, multiple options for success, why not do it? And another point I want to mention that relates to what you said, Terrell, that I think is related and ties back to the profitability is you mentioned, like, for example, how we would take one piece of content and we would do the breakdown, right? One of the things that I will say where it comes to that, and maybe this is something I don't want to like deviate too much from the point. But one of the things that I wanted to say when it comes to profitability is sometimes I've seen situations where the scrappy approach for business owners is oftentimes one that they're reluctant to take because again of the whole presentation of hey how they feel like this content needs to come across, it needs to be this big grand thing. And a lot of times you'll find that marketing companies will charge you $1,000 to put together content that you could create for yourself in 5 minutes, or to edit content that you could pay a content manager via one of those outsourced tools or systems or like websites to do for you for $20. So just being mindful of when you think about making decisions on marketing and how to structure your marketing team and support is just being mindful of where does the value really come in. And sometimes, like with things like we talked about, like just keeping things simple and scrappy, that stuff can still be used to run ads. It doesn't need to be all this fancy stuff. And oftentimes you'll have a marketing company charge you, I don't know, $500, $600 to do something that you can pay someone $20 to do for you or do yourself.
Gotcha. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about was just this getting this mindset about testing versus, hey, everything needs to be a Hollywood production or everything needs to be a bestseller. It's just grasping that mindset of, hey, I'm putting this out here to test certain elements or certain features. So when we are ready to do the grander production or the big written project, we already know what works. So
Yeah.
tell me what your thoughts are on that.
I think that is probably the best strategy you can use, and I think it saves you a ton of money. Again, we're going back to talking about profitability, right? So if you could test something through an organic platform, organic way, just post it and see if it does well, see what hits, then why not just take what's performed well without you really paying for marketing it and just run that. And I think we've seen that even Terrell with our content. Like one of the stuff that's done really, really well has been something that we really didn't anticipate. Like we did a video and we've noticed it's kind of been like a specific topic where we talk about like firing your accountant or hey these are things your accountant should be doing, and we found that that really resonated with people. And so like if I'm thinking about marketing, I'll speak specifically for us, then we're just going to run variations of that when we talk about running ads, right? And so I think I will say is if you can find an affordable or cost effective way to test your content, then absolutely do it. And it doesn't have to be that massive production. And I will say also, one of the things that I have learned in the last 5 months from working with a marketing company is one of the things they encouraged was the more natural, the less set up and techy or pretty, the better the content actually performed, because it made people feel like you were giving them an in into what you were doing or where you were. And so, aside from just the profitability and the quantitative piece, there's also the qualitative piece, which is when you are more approachable, more relaxed, people are more likely to, be attracted to you or be interested in what it is that you have to say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, because one of the things that I think about is, before we ever did a major, well, let's say before we invested 10 grand into doing a commercial,
Mhm.
one of the things that we did with the production company is we went through iterations of what, how that would lay out. Like we had to draw out a storyboard, and we went through all these elements. And one of the things that the production company came back to me and said is, you know what, we actually can do this on a, usually, Terrell, for what you want, it's usually about $15 to $25,000. But because you've done so much research already and you've
Mm.
narrowed things down, then it only came out to be around 10 grand. And a lot of that, I think, came from just, as we were putting out different content, I knew, like, hey, this content, these shorter videos, these posts that we're doing may not do as well, but my goal was to test to see what parts would connect well with the audience. And then when we kind of narrowed it down and said, hey, we've done 12 different posts, these 3 posts tend to perform the best, and here's some of the topics that we talked about. When we
Mm.
did that, that made it a lot easier, because then we didn't waste money trying to build a major production on something that wasn't going to connect well with the audience.
That's really good. And that goes back to the point that I made earlier, where marketing companies will charge you for that discovery, right? For that
Yeah.
brainstorming, for figuring that out. And realistically, you can figure that out by yourself before you actually involve a marketing company. And I think this is why it's so important to understand like who you're targeting and your audience, and like be very clear about what that looks like before you involve marketing companies, because again, it's a cost savings approach, right? You want them to help you do the things that you cannot do by yourself, or the things that are going to take a lot more effort. Creating content, doing some of those tests that we talked about are not going to require as much expertise or effort, and it can really save you money going forward.
Awesome. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about was kind of bringing all of the points that we talked about, bringing it all together to really hitting on, the ultimate hack when it comes down to getting profitable results from your marketing strategy. And that is bringing all that stuff together and creating what I call the feedback loop. And so I'll talk through a little bit of how we created a feedback loop, and then I want to get your thoughts and your input, because when I first came up with this idea, you were absolutely not on board. But I was like, stick with me, it's gonna work. And
I was
now
like, bro.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on how the process has been working. So here's what I mean by the feedback loop. Whereas at one point we started off, years ago, back in 2018, when we were just writing, where we were writing blogs and we developed the skill of writing. Then we moved into video, and then we got into some audio. And then we said, all right, what if we combine written with video and with audio, to where now one of the things that we do is we take the video that we're filming, like, for example, this episode here that we're doing for the podcast, we're going to take this video, we're going to take the captions from this video, and we're going to create written infographics based on the stuff that we're saying here, which means we're going to have a video form of this content, we're going to have a written form of this content, we're going to have a graphics version, and we're going to have an audio version. And all of those formats are based on this one video that we're recording right now. Now, the reason why that becomes so profitable, or the reason why I call it a profit hack, is because what we realize is customers who want to do business with you are going to come from a number of areas. They may come from watching your video, they may come from hearing your podcast or the audio version, or they may be short on time and they just saw a graphic that had some catchy caption with it, that's what brought them. And then also, I will say the last piece is then also commenting on other people's posts who talk about something similar. Now, when I explained all that originally, I think your initial response on me was, that's too much. So, what are your thoughts about that now?
I will say I think it's you were right. There you go. You were right. That was the right strategy. And I think it's the right strategy, and I know it's the right strategy because we've seen results. But I know that it's the right strategy also because we've seen, not just because we've seen results, but there's been different, like I guess Gary Vaynerchuk, who we follow, I mean, has talked about that as a strategy for not just small businesses, but Fortune 500 companies on just really putting out massive content. Um, but I will say I was initially reluctant. And I think the reason for that was because I was like, man, like, I just feel like it's a lot. Like, the people that are following us, I don't want to bombard people with content. Like, I don't want people to be like, man, we're sick and tired of seeing these people. But one of the things I remember you constantly told me when we would have those conversations was, Lola, not everybody is on social media 24/7. Like, someone might come online and they'll see you today at 3 o'clock. Someone might come online at 7 a.m. and they'll see your content. Someone might come online at 9 p.m. Like, our job is to continue posting, and the right people will find us and will connect with our content. And I think for me, if I'm just being very honest, I think I was reluctant and I was hesitant because for the first couple of years, I mean, we would get feedback here and there, and there'd be things that I guess, for lack of a better word, would go viral and would do really well. But then for most times, like, our content, it wasn't like we were getting a constant amount of like likes and comments. And so for me, I think I was just like, man, like, if people aren't commenting and people aren't liking, like, is it really resonating with people? But one of the things that I found very interesting is things you would tell me. I think also other people would tell me, where they'd be like, hey, I watched a video, like, someone that I like, people that I didn't even really know. Like, someone came up to me a couple of weeks ago and was like, hey, I follow your podcast. And I'm like, I've never seen you like anything. Like, who is this? Like, yeah, introduce themselves. Hey, Lola. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. And they're like, hey, I listen to the podcast and I follow it, and I really think it's really good information. And I think that's one of the things that I've had to realize is, and I think business owners, as a business owner, you have to realize this, is the people that want to do business with you continue to be consistent, continue to put out the content and put it out in several formats and forums, like you said, and trust that those people will find you. And so the more content, the more options and the more opportunity for them to find you. So I definitely say that I am definitely an advocate of that now. I wasn't, because again, I didn't want to bombard people, but definitely a strategy that we've seen pay off, specifically when it comes to getting new clients.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, because one of the things that I've learned now, I will say, prior to Chat GPT and all of these large language models, that stuff was being done by hand, to where it was, hey, we would create a video.
Yeah.
Somebody had to go back and watch the video, pull out a couple quotes, and
Shout out
then
to John
somebody
Boy.
also had to do captions for it. And then we also had to find images that we could make an infographic, and then somebody had to edit. And like I said, a lot of that was, it did require some time and effort. But one of the
Yeah.
things that I realized is that when I compare that strategy to what other people were doing, where there were people that I know that were spending thousands of dollars every single month on marketing, and they just were not getting results. And
Hmm.
so I was like, you know what? If we try this different method of actually creating a loop, I'll repeat it one more time, for, I mean, like, here's how the loop would work is, first we would come up with a topic, we would jot down some notes, or as we would call them, show notes, on, hey, here are the bullet points that I want to hit. record the video of a conversation on that topic. In the editing, we would separate the audio and the video. So now you got an audio, you got the video. We already had the show notes from it because we wrote down some notes beforehand. Now, the joy of using ChatGPT is take those notes, drop it in the ChatGPT and say, hey, give me 5 tweets based on this content. ChatGPT gives us 5 tweets. You can also say, hey, give me 3 quotes that represents or summarize the major points in this. Now you have the 3 quotes that now go on to infographics. Then it is just create the infographics. And now you have a video, you have show notes, you also have the audio, you have 5 tweets, and you have 3 infographics that can now go in multiple different places. And then I will say there is an extra hack to it that I think you can take it to the next level is you can also go into ChatGPT and say, hey, rewrite these tweets for a very specific type of client. Like in our case, it would be law firms. Like you say, hey, rewrite it for a law firm owner who is a female between age 45 and 60, located in Seattle, Washington.
Mm.
And you will get a more specific result to attract those type of people. And so I think in creating that type of feedback loop, what it's done is allowed us to create so much more content, and it allows us to meet our potential clients where they are to attract more clients, but we're doing it without having to spend a ton of money.
Right. And I think that has really been the game changer for us. And it goes back to, again, stuff your accountant isn't telling you. This is where the savings comes in. And I think sometimes, like, and I think for us also, like, we would have conversations before, like, we're not doing enough marketing. We're not marketing. We're not marketing. But for like the first, what, 3, 4 years in our business, like we didn't actually have like a last year was what the first time we did an actual marketing campaign. And I mean, so all of our clients have come from referrals, have come from people seeing our content, have come from people being like, hey, I like what you guys do. Do you guys support, can you guys support my business? And so I think ultimately at the end of the day, for me, it's really proven like this feedback loop has worked. Like we actually have results to prove it. And I know like you did a course, how you walked through like how we generated $75,000 in revenue from the content strategy that we had when we first started. Like those are tangible numbers that actually show us that this is not just something where it's like, oh, we just do these videos. I mean, we like to educate our audience and we enjoy putting out this content, but it is also yielding dividends for us that go beyond the traditional marketing campaigns. And it doesn't mean that those things, for me personally, I'll say this last thing. It doesn't mean those things are not valuable and those things shouldn't be done. I think for me, the point that I'm making, and I've seen this in our business, is being mindful about how you approach it. Like you said, Terrell, of just, okay, the work that you did for the marketing, for the video campaign that we ran, like the work that you did prior to that allowed us to save a lot of money that we would have paid, having the team go and basically do the research for us. But because we did the work ahead of time, it definitely helped save some money and ultimately improved our profitability.
Yeah, and I think any business can use that strategy. Like I said, even that, like that video, that speech that I gave about how we before we had 2,000 followers, we were able to use a video strategy on content, and it led to, like I said, over. I think in the video I talk about it was actually like over $80,000 in revenue came because of that strategy. And I break down what we actually did, and it's something that I've been asked to help other companies create and figure out. Like our friends over at Live Flow, of working with them on some great things about creating organic content that is leading to more revenue. I mean, because part of what the organic content did, like I did a video where I talked about how we were using the Live Flow tool. And
Mm.
what I did is I just talked about like, hey, we use the tool to automatically pull in financial information into a spreadsheet. From there, I can create formulas and we can create an automated dashboard to where our clients now get automated reports, and it's all powered by live flow in the background. I did that video for them, and it was just a simple video. And they came back and they said, "Hey, we got several new customers as a result of this video that you did." And I was like, it really is that simple of just creating a very conversational video or a graphic or something that helps people understand what you can do and what value you can probably add for them.
Yeah, that is a really, really good point. And I think one thing I'll say on that is being mindful of like the content doesn't have to be anything like super complex, and it doesn't have to be anything that's, where like, man, I've been studying for hours on this. I think a lot of times is just do content that resonates with you, or content that you feel like, hey, I think I'll say it this way, content that actually helps, like conversations you've had with clients, like I think that's something you do phenomenally well, Terrell, is problems that you've helped clients solve, like just that's content, right? This is how, and it's a great way to actually talk about the services we provide, where it's like, hey, this is a problem a client had. This is how I helped them solve it. And it's going to help business owners out there, even if they don't become our clients, but then it also is a good way to market the services that we offer. And I think for example, for like LifeFlow, that was a great way because you actually had a customer talking about, hey, this is how I've used the tool. This is how it works. What better way to have, your content be a driving force for generating revenue for your business than to actually just have an organic conversation that's not staged. I mean, they probably wouldn't have, if they spent thousands of dollars running an ad on that, I mean, it would have probably felt orchestrated and it wouldn't have felt organic. So I would say it's just, for me, there was a challenge initially of just like, okay, what am I going to talk about? Like, I have to think of all this topics, but a lot of times it's just share the experience that you're having with the clients that you have, and then let that experience be what drives your content. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy.
Absolutely. And so I do want to give a couple of reference points for people who are listening, because I think a lot of people, they may see the content and they say, okay, all right, Tara, I hear what you're saying, but I'm still not quite there and ready to create content. So here are a couple of sources that I think can really help you. A friend of mine, Katie Thomas, you can find her on LinkedIn. She does a lot of great videos and some written blogs, and she does some Q&A on how to get started with creating content, creating videos, and some of the things you need to learn. Also, Gary Vaynerchuk does a ton of stuff on YouTube where he's talking about creating content, and his content and his books really, really helped us. Also, Billy Jean is marketing. I've learned a ton from Billy Jean. He owns a digital marketing agency out on the West Coast, and he has done a lot of great things. And it really helped me get my mind in the right place when it came down to making it simple and being very productive. And so those are some very good sources that I think can really help you. And then also, I think what becomes really, really, really good is if you're in accounting and finance, or if you're in some type of professional, field, or if you're a lawyer, like we work with a lot, is find other accountants, other lawyers, other professionals, other business owners that are doing stuff and creating content online. Look at what they're doing, because sometimes that will give you some great ideas for stuff that you can do yourself, because
Mhm.
that is really going to help you realize that it's not that complicated. Once you get at least enough of an idea, you can get started and get rolling. And I will say, creating organic content is a great way for you to increase profitability, because you get in front of your ideal client at a fraction of the cost of a paid marketing strategy.
That was really good, Terrell. I don't think I have anything to add. Excellently done.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for tuning in to the stuff your accountant isn't telling you. I know we usually talk about a lot of accounting, technical accounting, or finance topics, but I do think this one was a very, very useful one because a lot of people know that they need to increase their sales. They need to bring more money into their business, but they're hesitant to invest in marketing. And a lot of times because people are wasting a lot of money in marketing because they have not actually maximized the organic strategies that they can use. So hopefully these ideas, plus there are more other ideas that we shared. I'll
Yeah.
also be on the road talking about this more. I'm going to be at a couple of conferences this year. I'll be at the Scaling New Heights conference with Joe Woodard in later in June. I'll be at the AICPA conference in early June. I'm doing a webinar with Live Flow team. I'll be at 2 conferences in the Chicago area in August. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of this stuff because we've been seeing a lot of success in this area and it can help so many businesses. So thanks for tuning in and definitely tell a friend about this episode.
Hey, it's your girl Tia Robertson. I'm the host of Entrepreneur Insider. Right here on RETV every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern for entrepreneurs and news that you need to know about. See you there.
Welcome to What's Going On? My name is Demita Joe. Each Wednesday, you can find me here at 3 p.m. I'll be over here discussing different things that are going on and try to bring you a boost of positivity for your week because we all need this. We're going to share some feel-good stories. We might find a hometown hero. We may take a look at some trending topic. And sometimes we might even find a lesson in a not-so-warm and fuzzy story if we can. I'm Demita Joe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode right here on What's Going On?